The concept of community is very important to Cal, but community doesn't just emerge out of the blue. It is an intentional process that each of us participates in on a daily basis. My name is Rodolfo Mendoza Denton. I'm a psychology professor here at UC Berkeley, and I'm your co-host, along with Dri Kavusi, ASUC Senator and fourth-year undergraduate. I'm joined today to talk about the topic of building community by Joseph Greenwell, Associate Vice Chancellor and Dean of Students, by Hallie Hunt, Assistant Dean of Students and Director for the Center of Student Conduct, and by Finn Schneider, Berkeley Cares and Bears That Care Program Manager. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
We want to talk about the concept of community and the role that the Dean of Students plays in that building of community. I wonder if you can introduce us to this office that often sounds so mysterious to students coming in to Berkeley for the first time.
Sure, I can start. So our office actually touches students from the moment that they come to campus all the way to the completion of their time here and in their career pursuits. So we provide a variety of resources for students with CALSO and getting your bearings and helping them understand how the campus navigates when they first come to campus. We work with students that around student activities, and we have over 1,000 student organizations, 66 fraternities and sororities. We have a student sustainability program, as well as Cal Debate, and so much more, and helping them around events and activities and leadership development. We help students with public service and really their passion of service, and with the Public Service Center, career development from the day they get here, and thinking about next steps and how to really present themselves in the professional world after college, and working with that. And then we work with students that sometimes things happen and they need additional support. And so we help to kind of elevate those students in that way. And that could be around everything about getting additional resources, as well as potentially facing situations where they're having to address their conduct.
Excellent. You mentioned some of the programs that run out of the Office of the Dean of Students. How can students on campus actively engage the Office of the Dean of Students?
I think a variety of ways with any of the people sitting at this table. First of all, we're all people. So it's really finding passion, getting a sense of and exploring what's available to them. And if they're having a hard time navigating the system, as it were, and trying to figure, because we do have so many student organizations, we do have so many opportunities for students, then to reach out to the Dean of Students team, and we'll help get them connected, whatever it might be.
So, Hallie, how might people reach out to the Dean of Students team? What does one do? Does one just walk up to a window, or?
Well, you could walk up to the door. I think another thing that we've done this year is that you can schedule appointments to meet with any of the deans online. So if you're a student who doesn't necessarily feel comfortable picking up the phone or walking in sort of without any sort of introduction, you can email us from our website and set up an appointment based on when you're available.
What is that website?
Joseph?
It's the Dean of Students website. So if all a student has to do, because they're not going to remember a website,
okay,
right? All they have to do is go to the university website and type in Dean of Students, and it'll pop up.
Thank you.
That's excellent. And I know that sometimes those appointments, they take, a few weeks, because all of us are extremely busy. If a student was having an emergency and had an urgent need to talk to y'all, could they just walk in and?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, we exist because we're here to help students, right? And so emergencies aren't scheduled events, they happen. And when people really need to get in touch with one of us, all they have to do is walk to our office.
Let me hold the thought of when someone is having an emergency or a specific difficulty, just on that for a quick second, and we want to get back to that. But I want to get back to the very quick list that you mentioned about those clubs, activities, groups that are not necessarily for emergencies, but for rather that building of community function. You mentioned CALSO, getting your bearings, and those were the only two that I caught. Do you mind maybe talking about some of the programs under the portfolio of the Dean's Office? First of all, what is CALSO? What is getting your bearings?
Sure. CALSO and getting your bearings. So CALSO is the orientation
I see.
for all incoming students, and to help students to understand some of the traditions and culture here at Cal, and also to start to navigate the campus and what the campus means and what it has to offer to students. Getting your bearings is similar. CALSO happens in the summer, but getting your bearings happens in the fall. And it's really important to welcome our students to the campus in a different way. They're looking at the campus with a different lens at that time and a different sense of excitement, and getting information out to them to help them be as successful as possible.
Something I would add on to that is I think many of our programs really empower students to help create the kind of community that they want to see at Cal. And specifically the program that I manage out of the Office of the Dean of Students, which is Bears the Care, that's the exact model we take, which is teaching students how to be active members of the community and intervene in situations where harm or danger could potentially become a problem, and intervene in a way before a situation escalates to that. And I think one thing that really helps sends a message of empowerment to our students, particularly our first-year students who may be navigating a really large university, right, and trying to establish different communities and connections, and to have a message of empowerment and being able to actively shape the community that they're going to be a part of for the next 4 or 5 or more years. I think that's a message of empowerment, and something that I'm really excited to be a part of.
You, Hallie, you work in student conduct. Can you elaborate on what Student Conduct Office is all about?
Sure. So we basically make sure that students are following the policies that are put into place to help make sure that we have a safe community where people do feel comfortable to take advantage of all that Berkeley has to offer. So a lot of times the students that we're interacting with are students who are maybe at a crossroads, maybe aren't thinking about how their behavior is impacting the community. And it's always our goal to kind of bring it back to that, and help people think about how they make decisions and how they want to exist within our campus community.
Absolutely. And y'all are also a resource for students that need help.
Absolutely.
They can seek out student conduct.
So, we take reports from basically anybody who wants to get in touch with us. And if students feel like they've suffered some kind of harm, or that something didn't go exactly the way that they think that it might have supposed to go, they can come and talk to us. We can help talk them through what their options are for reporting, and help them problem solve.
So you just used the phrase something that they didn't think was going to happen. Can you give some concrete examples of the kinds of issues that your office handles?
So we handle everything from academic misconduct, so cheating on a test, accidentally plagiarizing a paper. I think a lot of freshmen, for instance, come to school not really understanding what they need to do in order to properly cite sources and things like that. So we can help students learn those things so that they don't do that again. So all the way up to any sort of physical or sexual assault, for instance. So it runs the gamut.
What does that do to help bolster a sense of community, having those guidelines?
Well, it helps us to be a safe community that respects one another. And when people feel like they're safe and that they're respected, that's really when they can feel comfortable to take advantage of the opportunities to get involved on the campus and to really succeed academically.
What is the Student Code of Conduct? Is there content that's easily memorable to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a set of rules. So it basically says we're not going to cheat, we're not going to assault one another, we're not going to steal from each other, things like that. Basic rules that in order for us to be successful, to work together, rules of engagement.
But Finn, it sounds like a student code of conduct is it borders on the punitive, the thou shalt not, don't cheat, don't steal, don't, hurt others. But is there a positive sense to that student code of conduct? Is there a way to think about it in that way?
Absolutely, I think so. I would liken it to almost sort of community agreements or community standards, right? So by choosing to be a part of this incredible Cal community, we all have to have some mutually agreed upon standards and expectations of one another. And hopefully, I think the idea is that accountability would come from within the community, that folks would feel accountable to the person sitting next to them in class, so that they would treat that person with respect. But I think there is a lot of value in having what those standards are documented, so that when there is a situation in the community that needs to be addressed, or perhaps there needs to be accountability in some capacity, there is very clear expectations to refer back to. I think the conversation of rights and responsibilities is absolutely a part of that. And what I would add is, in student affairs, we always come at things with a lens of development and empowerment. And so in situations where it's applicable, allowing someone or a community to learn from a mistake that may have happened and to repair harm as much as possible.
So let me try to summarize the conversation so far. We've specifically invited you as representatives of the Dean of Students Office to try to communicate that when we talk about community, it's not only students, but rather that there is a much broader community to support that development, and that it's not only a punitive kind of place where you go and it's very scary. Rather, it's a place where you can grow, where you can learn the community standards. We talked about CalSO, we talked about getting your bearings. Hallie, help me out. What else is under the portfolio of the Dean of Students Office?
Well, we have the attorney for students. So students, it's a person who provides free legal advice to students who may need it, and they can help with anything from a landlord-tenant issue off campus to I got in a car accident, and what do I do with my insurance? So things like that.
Okay.
What else?
Additionally, we have the Career Center, which Joseph alluded to earlier, and that provides great resources for students, not just as they're getting ready to graduate and job search, right, but from the very beginning of their time here at Cal in terms of looking for internships or filling out their resume. Additionally, the Lead Center, which is where all of our student organizations are housed, as well as support for the ASUC, the student government. There's some great opportunities through the Lead Center as well.
ASUC, Lead, Lawyers for Students, Bears That Care, Berkeley Cares. These are the kinds of programs that are under the directorship of the Dean's Office, and that's hopefully that's a resource that the incoming students to Cal can all benefit from.
And can I say too, aside from that, the Dean's Office and the office hours are meant to help with this. There's so many other opportunities of engagement outside of the Dean's Office that sometimes it's hard to figure out what all the opportunities might be and how to get connected. And so we're here to help students navigate all the resources of the campus, not just the resources within the AVC Dean of Students area. And so students will come and talk to me about things that really have nothing to do with my oversight, but I'm able to get them connected with the right people that can help them and to assist them in whatever that situation might be.
And that's really helpful to know because Cal, particularly when you're coming in, I mean, throughout the 4 years, but it's such an overwhelming place that knowing that, okay, if I have no idea, at least one of the best ideas I can do is to contact my Dean of Students office. That's great.
And on such a large campus, it's really, really amazing to have such accessible leaders in the Dean of Students office. But I kind of wanted to hone in on this idea of community. What does community have to do with wellness? We're teaching this wellness course, and what is this segment really all about? What do y'all think the importance of community is on the Cal campus?
I think it's a great question in terms of thinking about health in a very holistic way, right? So from my particular lens, community is a place that should be safe, where people can freely engage, and we know from research that students are much more likely to persist to graduation if they feel connected to their community, if they feel safe, if they have a place that feels like home for them. So a big part of violence prevention is helping to create that place for folks on campus and empowering people to really envision and create that for themselves. I would also add, because public health is a big piece of violence prevention, from a public health lens, we're all absolutely shaped by our environment. Right? So health, in many ways, is a community issue. It's a community wellness issue. And if one individual person in a community is having a difficult experience, that's absolutely going to have an impact on folks around them, whether it's their roommate or the person that they sit next to in a lecture. So I think really looking at wellness and community from a larger perspective, what in public health we would call the social ecological model, that is a fantastic way to think about how these pieces are connected, how community building and feeling belonging and safety is absolutely a measure of health and wellness.
To me, it's about belonging and mattering. So, that I want every student that comes to Cal to know that they belong here and that they matter. And that's about the interactions you have with individuals. And to me, community is the foundation for that in creating a healthy environment. And community is also about supporting each other when things are challenging and when there is stress, and it's not just about supporting your friends, and and it's not about even if you haven't gone through bystander intervention or whatever it might be, it's about if you see a student sitting and looks upset or sad or whatever it might be, don't just pass that student. That's a fellow bear. It's to stop and talk to that student. And the more that we do that, the more that we smile and say hello to each other, just simple little tiny things, the more that people feel and know that they belong here and that people care. And that in itself helps with your wellness.
Thank you for mentioning that, because I know going to a school with 35,000 students, it can, you put your blinders on, you power walk to class, and you look at your phone and you stay kind of honed in with your group of friends. How can a student feeling overwhelmed, or even that already has found their community, broaden their community? How can they join different clubs and get involved? Or what do y'all think?
Well, I think that if you're living in the residence halls, that's a really good way to at least get a start, because the residence halls have everybody in them. Mm-hmm. And students are going to be naturally drawn to majors that they're interested in, or maybe even possibly clubs that are attached to their majors at the beginning. But if you're in a residence hall, you're living next door to folks that you may not interact with otherwise. And getting to know those people, I think, is a really good way to start learning about what other people are involved in, and maybe things that you would not think about that you'd be interested in as well. I think your RAs are a really good resource for that too.
Or just walking on Sproul Plaza, looking at all the student organizations. Yeah. And some people aren't comfortable just going up to a table and having the conversation. Go to the website. You can see all of them. Contact them via email if that feels safer to you. It's really easy. You don't have to do anything to really join a group other than say, I want to join your group, and try it out. And what I would say is to be open to new experiences. If you're like, oh, I'm not really a dancer, but I always like dance. Well, try it out. Join a group to where you can explore that and that passion, and you might find a community in that you never thought you'd have.
So it's not only then about an academic experience. I mean, many students feel like they've come to Cal and they and their families have sacrificed a lot to get an education, but don't see these experiences of community that we're talking about as part of that experience. And yet here we are talking about exploring dance. How does one reconcile that?
To me, when we're talking about wellness is what we're talking about. And by creating community, you create wellness. And through wellness, you have academic achievement. So they all are interlocked together in that respect. And, and allowing students, we believe in the holistic student. A student's not just here focus on academics. They have other aspects of their lives that they might want to explore in these times here at Cal, and to give them those opportunities. And some students may never want to start, be part of a student organization, but they may find their community within their research interests and within the academic world, and that's cool too. So just creating various avenues, because creating community for each individual is unique, and to recognize that community means different things to different people.
And where else in life, when else in life, are you going to have the opportunity to do things like this? To join a dance club, to go take a yoga class, to go, learn how to paint, or things that may have nothing to do with your academic experience. It's a really great time of life to be able to kind of experiment, and it's all here, and most of it is free, and that can be really exciting. And people will discover passions that they didn't even know that they had that will add meaning to their life for the rest of their lives.
Then you're talking about empowerment, and I think that the getting involved in different activities you'd never been involved in before is definitely empowering. And how does one do that and at the same time be a cooperative member of a community?
Well, I think it requires a great deal of self-reflection and a willingness to have one's ideas and beliefs challenged, perhaps. One of the beautiful things for me, coming from a much smaller campus in the Midwest, one of the beautiful things about this campus is how incredibly diverse it is in all different aspects. And so I think for me, the question that you ask is really important, and it does require a good degree of being willing to reflect on one's own experiences, what one is bringing to this community. I think as well as to have difficult conversations sometimes and lean into some of that discomfort of, oh wow, we really have different ideas and perspectives, and there's some really neat richness and complexity there. Someone once told me that the beauty is in asking the questions, and sometimes the limitations come in giving the answers, because oftentimes answers are very simple. We try to simplify things. And so I think asking a lot of questions and being willing to engage across some of those different ideas is one way. I think additionally, seeking out things kind of to what Hallie and Joseph have already said that may have been completely outside of your experience. That's been one of my richest learning moments in my undergrad, was when I perhaps went to a student organization meeting that I knew nothing about, and really embraced that, yes, I don't know anything, and it's okay to say that. So I think those are some things that come to mind.
Finn, related to that point, it can be very difficult, if not positively daunting, to approach a person or a group of people that you feel you have nothing in common with. You might feel stigmatized, you might feel unwelcome. What are some strategies that students can use to overcome those barriers, real or perceived?
I think that's a really great question. I think it might always be easier to go in pairs or groups, right? So I myself would feel very intimidated by doing something like that. I also, for me personally, do it as a cost-benefit analysis in my mind, but that's the way my brain works. So I think so maybe I go and it's really awkward for a couple of minutes and I'm uncomfortable and then I have to walk away. But what if I don't go at all and I miss an incredible opportunity to meet my future best friend, or to discover a new idea or something that could completely change my understanding of the world? So I think being willing to step outside of one's comfort zone and for at least a little while embrace some of that discomfort and lean into that can be powerful. I think there is also a lot to be said in finding a community that one does feel really safe and have a lot in common with, and kind of establishing that solid home base or foundation to build up a little bit of that strength and that confidence, and then reaching out once that has been established, perhaps like as a small group of folks who go to a brand new table on Sprawl and have that conversation together.
I think it's important to also remember that everybody here started off as somebody who was new. And so if we all try to remember what that was like, we can help create a more welcoming community for the people who come behind us. And I always like to think about the idea that people are out on Sproul Hall or Sproul Plaza behind tables recruiting members because they want to find other people who want to be with them, right? So if I'm the person going up to the table, I just have to remember that they're looking for me as much as I'm looking for them, or else they wouldn't be sitting there in the first place.
I think one of the themes that keeps coming up throughout these wellness segments is the idea that sometimes our fears and our concerns we feel are so personal, and that we're the only ones experiencing this. I feel so uncomfortable in this situation, and yet there's something quite normative to these feelings of wanting a sense of community and feeling like people might not accept me, and yet there's all these opportunities that people partake in. We talked about the holistic student, how it's not just about academics, how it's about trying to find communities, and there's an intentionality to that. There's an intentionality to going out to seek folks, strategies, maybe a friend, maybe seeing whether the costs outweigh the benefits. But all of those together are the kinds of steps that students can take to begin to establish those social connections, which in fact, as we talked about in the happiness, gratitude, and compassion segment, impact wellness. But the campus is really large, really quite diverse. And so in any large, complex community, there are going to be frictions and there are going to be ugly incidents. Let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so Finn, could you elaborate more on what Bears That Care is?
Absolutely, sure. So Bears That Care is a violence prevention program, and the primary approach that we look at is bystander intervention as a strategy, we were just talking about strategies, to try to help reduce incidences of violence and harm on campus. And when we talk about violence prevention, we're really talking about it at its widest breadth, right? So when we conceptualize violence, we include things like bullying or hazing, as well as physical forms of violence, as well as things like campus climate issues that may be related to bias or exclusionary types of behavior that can create an environment that doesn't feel safe and welcoming. So Bears That Care is a program that really tries to empower everyone in this community to understand understand their role in helping to co-create a community that feels safe and welcoming for everyone. And bystander intervention is a strategy that can be applied across so many different types of situations. So a lot of what we do is go into already established communities and try to empower the folks within that community to really create culture shift. So working with athletics teams, or working with folks in the residence halls, or working with student organizations from within their communities, right, as opposed to coming from as an outsider and telling folks what they should do, but really engaging from within that community in an empowerment model to problem solve. So how do we address these situations that could become harmful or violent?
That's great. That's great. And so within that, there's something called bystander intervention, I know. And can you explain to our viewers what bystander intervention looks like?
Absolutely. Yeah, bystander intervention really breaks down to 3 simple steps. The first one is recognizing that there is something that could potentially need to be intervened upon. So noticing in the first place, right? So many folks on campus walk around looking at their mobile devices. I know I do that as well. That we practically run into one another. So maybe noticing in the first place is the first step. The second step is deciding to act. And that sounds so simple, but there's actually a lot of cognitive obstacles. Much research has been done in the field of social psychology to look at those cognitive obstacles that get in the way of us deciding, I need to do something about this. Oftentimes, the bystander effect kicks in and we think, oh, someone else can address this. And then the third piece of that is intervening effectively and safely. And so through Bears That Care, we try to provide some great strategies that are realistic, that make it so it's not cookie cutter, that you always have to go and directly confront someone. But here's another strategy you could possibly use if you want to intervene in a situation that's making you feel uncomfortable.
And could you give us a classic, or maybe not classic, an example of what bystander intervention would look like in practice?
Yes, absolutely. So one example that we often talk about is if you're at a social event and you see something happening that makes you feel nervous, maybe it's in the evening time and there's not staff around. As a student, you could create a diversion just to get attention away from what is happening that makes you feel nervous, and so then you could check in with that person. So a classic example that a lot of the student peer educators like to use is putting on a classic song that everyone loves, and suddenly all the attention will be directed to that song, which creates an opening then to check in with the person and ask, like, are you okay? Is there anything I can help you with in this moment?
And what if I, as a bystander, feel like I don't want to interrupt a conversation? That's not my business. What would you say to someone who says, you know, I don't want to be nosy.
Right.
It's really not my affair.
And I think that's a really common reaction. I know I have that reaction all the time. I would say, again, that cost-benefit analysis, I would rather check in with that person, even if I don't know them, if they're a complete stranger, and ask, than say that something bad was going to happen, and then I find out the next day, oh my gosh, my gut reaction was correct, and if I had only asked that person if they might need my help, I could have changed the situation. So for me, it's really being willing to take that risk and step into that leadership opportunity, as opposed to a feeling of regret and then potentially someone experiencing harm.
And I would say that more times than not, you know, if someone doesn't need that support, they'll be thankful for you for caring enough to ask. So again, creating that sense of care and community is there no matter what, you know, even if they don't need the support. So
when one person does something, when one person shows that they're paying attention, I think it can have a really powerful effect on the other people who are there, because it empowers other people to stand up and you know, intervene if they can.
So so you're saying essentially that when you break a wall of silence or inaction, it kind of opens the door for other people to act similarly. Is that?
It's a domino effect.
And it really is supported by social norms theory research, that if we start to establish that bystander intervention is the norm, more folks will actually start to do that and overcome some of these cognitive obstacles.
But what about cases where if we're in the cost-benefit analysis land, the cost to you is potentially quite grave. So, for example, if there is an incident of violence and you are a bystander, and there's a realistic chance that you could end up getting hurt. I mean, that's a fairly serious cost, and yet the cost to the other person is potentially even greater. How does one manage that psychologically, structurally?
Right. I think it's a great question, and that's why we try to give so many different strategies. So maybe you can't intervene in that exact moment for your own safety. Is there something else that you could do? Could you call someone on the phone? Could you create a diversion? One time I was in a situation where it wasn't safe for me to do anything. There was a physical fight in a neighborhood close to where I live. So I just started from in my car with the doors locked, honking the horn incessantly until I caught the attention of the people who were engaged in the fight. So are there other creative ways to try to at least send the message, someone is here, someone is watching this, of course, without putting oneself in danger, and making sure one is aware of your own boundaries, your own safety and boundaries. I think alerting others is a good option.
That's great. And in the same vein of caring, can you elaborate on the CARE model?
Sure. I can talk about the CARE model. Of course, Berkeley doesn't have nearly enough acronyms, so it's one more acronym. But CARE is simply an acronym of different strategies for bystander intervention, and it's what we teach through Bears That Care. So the C stands for confront, so that would be if it is a safe situation, you could just directly confront the situation. The A is for alert others, and that could be UCPD, that could be your RA, that could be a staff member, it could be anybody. The R stands for redirect attention. So in a situation where it wasn't safe to directly confront, you could create a diversion, whatever you can come up with. That one's pretty open. And the E is engage peers. So if we both see something, but we're not really sure what to do, but I kind of check in with you and I realize that you had the same thought, then maybe we can confront it together or problem solve together. So really just getting that dialogue going proactively or reactively, if the case may be.
So to recap, confront, alert, redirect, engage.
Absolutely.
Do I have that right?
You have it exactly right.
And the program is Bears That Care, and there's presumably a website associated with that.
Yes, it's connected to the Dean of Students website.
That's wonderful to know. So again, I think the point that is worth repeating is that these are programs for the community that can be found through the Dean of Students office. What about situations where you've been harmed or you've been a witness and you're experiencing pain, physical, mental, or otherwise? What resources can students draw on there?
Well, there's a variety of resources depending on what the situation might be. So, I mean, if they're needing counseling, for example, then they may go directly to a counselor in the Tang Center and get support there. I find that sometimes students don't quite know what they're experiencing sometimes, and it might be a little ambiguous and kind of the support that they might need. Again, I think that's where the Dean's office can serve in that capacity and help, sit down with the student and kind of talk about what's going on. And not that we have the solution to all problems, but then we can navigate and get them to the right entity in order to support them in the right way.
You can also call UCPD if you've been injured. You can go to your RD or your RA if you live in the halls and you feel comfortable with them. You can always call my office, the conduct office, and talk it through with us. Basically, I would encourage people to go to somebody that they trust, that they feel who is somewhat connected to the university campus, because they're likely to be able to direct you where you need to go.
I actually was on BART recently, and a student came up to me, recognized me because of my bow tie, which I wear every day, and disclosed some things that was happening in his life. And we were able to talk through that, and then not that I was the right person to help that individual with what's going on, but I was able to connect that person with the right people and to get the support he needed.
So I really think it's important to emphasize that oftentimes when events happen that are distressing, we don't often know how to talk about them or exactly, how to even interpret those ambiguous events. And so it's helpful to know that you don't have to have a specific issue or problem or concern that you can necessarily verbalize.
We don't expect everyone to know everything too. I mean, it's okay to say you don't know. It's okay to say, I'm not the right person to help you, but then to say, let's figure this out together and work together to figure out who is.
We've walked many students down from the conduct office down to social services, the counseling center at Tang, because they've disclosed something to us that clearly that the student's emotional needs at that moment take precedent, and we're not going to just say, oh, go to the Tang Center, it's down the street over there. we will actually walk a student from our office to the Tang Center and wait with them until they get in to see somebody, if that's what they want.
So it sounds like there's plenty of resources available for students. I want to bring this idea back to, we have bystander intervention program, Berkeley Cares, Bears That Care. How does that help build a sense of community, and how can one be then an ambassador for the university and the community more generally?
Well, I think it starts helping us to remember that we're not responsible just for ourselves, right? We're responsible for those around us. And if we all are feeling that way, then that means there are other people who are taking care of us too. And so I think that's partly why it's so important. I think it's important for people to come to Berkeley and know that they're safe and know that they're not alone and that they are part of a larger whole. And if we don't all commit to taking care of one another, then that's not a possible vision.
I mean, these are skill sets that are going to help a student throughout their lives, and in the world, because, bystander intervention is needed everywhere, and creating a sense of community is really important everywhere as far as happiness in the workforce or being able to be successful in your work. And so these are building blocks to help the student not only in their success here at Cal, but really with their career and their career development.
We're at the end of our segment. Is there anything that anybody would like to add?
I'd like to just say that, I appreciate this opportunity and kind of explaining. I think when people think of a dean of students, they automatically think of the principal or they think of a conduct kind of office. And we're actually far more than that. Conduct is a small piece of what we do, and much of the rest of the work that we do is centered around engagement and development and training and really supporting students in their holistic journey here at Cal. So I really appreciate the opportunity to kind of, get rid of that, that stereotype, as it were, of what we do and how we do things at Cal.
Thank you. That's a really important point. We've learned about Bears That Care. We've learned about bystander intervention. We've learned about all the programs in the portfolio of the Dean's Office to reinforce precisely that point. It's been wonderful to have you, and I want to thank you for your presence and for being here this afternoon with us. With that, we sign off, and we'll see you in the next segment. Thank you.